The moment a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you, they begin to emotionally collapse behind the mask. And the terrifying part? Most people mistake that collapse for power. Because when you truly defeat a narcissist, they reveal 4 dark behaviors that expose what they were hiding all along. And once you see these signs, you will never look at their manipulation the same way again. If this video is helping you understand narcissistic behavior on a deeper level, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Sometimes one piece of awareness can save years of emotional damage. One of the clearest signs that you have truly defeated a narcissist is the sudden increase in their aggression, hostility, and emotional intensity. Many people mistakenly believe this means the narcissist is becoming stronger, but psychologically, the opposite is happening. A narcissist depends on emotional control the same way an addict depends on a source of supply. Your reactions, your pain, your need to explain yourself, and your emotional attachment gave them a sense of power. The moment you stop reacting the way you once did, they experience a deep internal panic that they rarely admit, even to themselves. This is why their behavior often becomes more extreme after you begin healing. They may suddenly criticize you more harshly, send long manipulative messages, provoke arguments out of nowhere, or attack the very insecurities they once pretended to comfort. These reactions are not random. They are desperate attempts to reopen emotional access to you. They are searching for proof that they still matter enough to disturb your peace. What truly unsettles a narcissist is not anger. They can work with anger because anger is still emotional engagement. What terrifies them is your calm detachment. Your silence forces them to confront something they cannot control. When you stop defending yourself, stop chasing closure, and stop emotionally performing for them, the narcissist begins to feel powerless. And for someone whose identity is built on domination and validation, powerlessness feels psychologically unbearable. The smear campaign is one of the most revealing signs that a narcissist feels defeated by you. When they realize they can no longer control you emotionally, they often shift their focus toward controlling how other people see you. This is because narcissists are deeply dependent on image. Their public persona is carefully constructed to appear innocent, admirable, misunderstood, or superior. The moment you begin seeing through their manipulation and emotionally distancing yourself, you become a threat to that false identity. Instead of reflecting on their behavior, they attempt to rewrite the story. Suddenly, they begin telling others that you were the toxic one. They may describe you as unstable, dramatic, selfish, cold, or abusive. What makes this behavior disturbing is that many narcissists accuse others of the exact things they themselves have done. This psychological projection helps them escape accountability while preserving their image in front of friends, family, or mutual connections. What hurts them most is not simply losing you. It is losing control over the narrative. They fear that if people hear your side, the mask they spent years building could crack. So they rush to poison perceptions before the truth catches up to them. But there is something narcissists do not expect. The calmer and quieter you remain, the more their behavior eventually exposes itself. Healthy people do not obsessively destroy someone's reputation after a breakup or disagreement. Over time, their bitterness begins to reveal the insecurity and instability hiding beneath the performance they worked so hard to protect. One of the strangest things about narcissists is that even after they walk away, block you, replace you, or pretend they no longer care, many of them continue secretly monitoring your life. This behavior confuses people because it seems contradictory. If they are truly happy without you, why do they keep watching from a distance? The answer is deeply psychological. Narcissists do not form relationships based on healthy emotional connection. They form attachments based on control, validation, and emotional access. So when you finally detach and begin healing, they experience it as a personal defeat. This is why they often check your social media, ask mutual friends about you, or find indirect ways to stay informed about your life. Some even create fake accounts just to observe silently. They may not openly contact you, but psychologically, they are still trying to maintain a sense of connection and influence. Your growth becomes difficult for them to accept because it challenges the illusion that they were powerful enough to permanently damage you. What especially disturbs a narcissist is seeing you become peaceful without their approval. They expected you to remain emotionally stuck, constantly thinking about them, needing closure, or struggling to move forward. But when you start rebuilding your confidence, enjoying your life, and emotionally moving on, it creates a narcissistic injury. Your healing becomes evidence that they were never as important or powerful as they imagined. And that realization silently attacks the fragile ego hiding beneath their arrogance, forcing them to watch from afar while losing the control they once believed they would always have over you. One of the biggest signs that a narcissist feels defeated is their sudden obsession with appearing happy, successful, and completely unbothered. Almost overnight, their social media becomes filled with smiling pictures, inspirational quotes, luxury displays, new relationships, or constant attempts to show the world how perfect their life is. To most people, this looks like confidence and moving on. But psychologically, it is often the opposite. Excessive performance usually hides emotional instability. A narcissist builds their identity around external validation. They need admiration, attention, envy, and reactions from others to maintain the image they created for themselves. When you finally detach emotionally and stop feeding them attention, it creates a painful wound to their ego. Instead of processing that pain in a healthy way, they attempt to cover it with performance. They want you to see their happiness. They want others to believe they won. Every photo, every post, every exaggerated display becomes part of a silent message directed at you. But truly secure people do not constantly need to advertise their peace. Genuine happiness is usually quiet and natural. Narcissists, however, become obsessed with controlling appearances because appearances are often all they have left. The more healed and emotionally grounded you become, the more pressure they feel to maintain the illusion that they are thriving without you. Deep down, your emotional freedom reminds them of something they cannot tolerate. They no longer have the power to affect your self-worth, your peace, or your identity. And for a narcissist, losing that control feels like losing the entire game. Another powerful sign that a narcissist feels truly defeated is when they suddenly attempt to reconnect with you after a long period of silence or cruelty. This often happens right when you are finally healing, rebuilding your confidence, and emotionally detaching from the damage they caused. Out of nowhere, they may send a casual message, pretend to check on you, apologize vaguely, or act nostalgic about the past. To someone who still hopes for closure, this can feel confusing and emotional. But psychologically, this behavior is rarely about love. It is about testing whether they still have access to your emotions. Narcissists struggle deeply with losing control over people they once manipulated. Your independence threatens the false sense of power they built around themselves. So when they sense that you are genuinely moving on, they often return not because they changed, but because your healing creates insecurity inside them. They want reassurance that they still matter enough to interrupt your peace. What makes this tactic dangerous is how subtle it can appear. Sometimes they return with kindness instead of aggression. They may suddenly act understanding, vulnerable, or emotionally mature. But beneath the surface, the goal is often the same: to reopen emotional access and restore control. The narcissist wants proof that they can still trigger feelings inside you whenever they choose. And the moment you respond emotionally, even through anger, they feel temporarily powerful again. That is why true victory is not simply leaving the narcissist. It is reaching a point where their return no longer emotionally destabilizes your mind, your peace, or your sense of self. One of the deepest signs that a narcissist feels defeated is when they begin losing emotional composure in ways they once mocked in others. Narcissists spend a great deal of energy creating the image of being powerful, calm, superior, and emotionally untouchable. They want people to believe they are always in control. But when someone finally escapes their manipulation and no longer seeks their approval, that carefully constructed image begins to crack. Beneath the confidence is often a fragile ego that cannot handle rejection, loss of control, or emotional irrelevance. This is why defeated narcissists may suddenly become emotionally unpredictable. They may swing between rage and fake kindness, arrogance and self-pity, silence and obsession. One moment they act as though they never cared about you, and the next moment they seem desperate to provoke a reaction. These emotional shifts happen because they are struggling internally with the collapse of control they once depended on. The person they believed would always chase them, fear them, or emotionally submit to them is no longer participating in the game. What especially disturbs them is your emotional stability. When you remain calm while they lose composure, it forces them to confront something they try desperately to avoid, their own insecurity. Narcissists often survive by projecting confidence outward while hiding chaos inward. So when their manipulation no longer works, the mask slips, and the emotional instability underneath becomes visible. And this is the irony most survivors eventually realize. The narcissist spent years trying to convince you that you were emotionally weak, yet the moment you reclaim your peace, they become the one unable to regulate their emotions anymore. Another major sign that a narcissist feels defeated is when they begin trying to provoke jealousy, insecurity, or emotional competition inside you. This behavior is rarely accidental. Once they realize they no longer have emotional control over you, they often attempt to trigger a reaction by showing off new relationships, friendships, achievements, or attention from other people. They want you to feel replaced, inferior, forgotten, or emotionally disturbed. Why? Because if they can still make you jealous or insecure, they can convince themselves they still hold psychological power over you. This is why narcissists frequently rush into highly visible relationships after a breakup, or suddenly become obsessed with public displays of affection and attention. To outsiders, it may appear as though they moved on quickly and found happiness. But emotionally healthy people do not usually feel the need to constantly perform their relationships for validation. Narcissists do this because they are trying to repair their wounded ego through external admiration and emotional reactions from others. At a deeper level, your emotional detachment creates a painful insecurity inside them. They expected you to remain emotionally attached, still seeking answers, or secretly hoping for their return. But when you stop reacting and begin focusing on your own healing, it disrupts the fantasy of control they created in their mind. So they attempt to provoke comparison and self-doubt in order to pull you back into emotional engagement. What frustrates them most is when you refuse to compete. The moment you stop measuring your worth against their performance, the manipulation loses power. Your peace becomes proof that their tactics no longer control your emotions. And that realization quietly damages the ego they worked so hard to protect. The final and perhaps most powerful sign that a narcissist feels defeated is when your emotional freedom no longer depends on their validation, approval, or presence. This is the stage narcissists fear the most because it represents something they never expected to lose: psychological control over your inner world. A narcissist can tolerate conflict, arguments, and even temporary separation, because as long as you are emotionally reacting to them, they still feel connected to your mind. But the moment you become emotionally indifferent, something shifts that they cannot easily repair. Emotional detachment is terrifying to a narcissist because it removes the very thing they relied on to feel powerful. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your choices. You stop seeking closure from someone committed to misunderstanding you. Their insults no longer define your worth, and their approval no longer controls your self-esteem. This forces the narcissist to confront a painful reality. They no longer have the ability to emotionally move you the way they once could. What makes this defeat so devastating for them is that it cannot be manipulated away. They may try rage, guilt, charm, fake apologies, jealousy tactics, or public performances, but none of it works anymore because your healing changed the dynamic completely. You are no longer emotionally available for control. And this is where true power finally returns to you, not through revenge, not through winning arguments, but through peace. The narcissist loses the moment your happiness no longer requires their permission. Because once you reclaim your emotional identity, their manipulation becomes powerless noise instead of psychological control. In the end, defeating a narcissist is not about exposing them, humiliating them, or making them suffer the way they made you suffer. Real victory happens much more quietly than that. It begins the moment you stop allowing their manipulation to control your emotions, your decisions, and your sense of self-worth. Narcissists survive through emotional access. They feed on reactions, confusion, guilt, fear, and emotional dependency. But when you finally heal, detach, and reclaim your peace, the entire foundation of their control begins to collapse. That is why they react in such extreme ways after losing you. The aggression, the smear campaigns, the fake happiness, the jealousy tactics, the silent monitoring, and the emotional instability are all signs of the same painful truth they are trying to escape. They no longer control you. And for someone whose identity depends on power over others, that loss feels unbearable. But your healing changes everything. You begin to see manipulation without doubting yourself. You stop chasing closure from people incapable of accountability. You stop shrinking yourself to keep toxic people comfortable. And most importantly, you realize that your peace is more valuable than being understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. The narcissist may continue performing, provoking, or pretending they have moved on, but none of it matters once you emotionally detach from the game they created. Because true freedom is not getting